Very interesting.
All right, moment of geek, which actually begins with a moment of historical iconography. If Americans are familiar with the phrase Cooper Union, chances are it is because of this: Matthew Brady's Cooper Union portrait of Abraham Lincoln. The photograph Brady took of Lincoln at his studio in New York City on the same day that Lincoln gave his Cooper Union address. Lincoln was then presidential candidate Abraham Lincoln, and it is believed the speech he gave that night to a Republican Party group in which he outlined his ideas about slavery, that speech is thought to have helped win Lincoln the Republican nomination and later the White House. This is the building where Lincoln gave that speech, the Cooper Union Foundation building in the East Village of Lower Manhattan, what is now the administrative building of one of the best and most affordable colleges in the country. In fact, so affordable, it is free. Because the guy who gave Cooper Union its name, Peter Cooper, an industrialist, an inventor, and one-time presidential candidate himself, Peter Cooper believed that the best education should be accessible to anyone who qualified to get in. Anyone. That included women and people of color. And the question of whether a student could pay for tuition, well, he thought that should be irrelevant. So for more than a century now, every student at Cooper Union has received a full tuition scholarship to study disciplines like art and architecture and engineering at one of the best colleges in the country. That's the vision and the mission and the history of the Cooper Union. In its more recent history, school administrators announced they would begin chipping away at that policy. They said they would begin charging tuition for graduate students starting this school year. Undergrads were safe for now, but maybe later the school would start charging tuition for them too. Just one of many avenues the school said it was taking as it searched for a way out of what it described as a deepening financial hole. Despite the recent financial crisis, though, the Cooper Union has been able to maintain its $600 million endowment. It owns the land beneath the Chrysler building, which brings in more income, but the school says it is operating at a loss and the shortfall has to come from somewhere, including from the students. Never mind what the school's founder and namesake, Peter Cooper, said about a free education for every student. If you know anything at all about students, then you know the evolving school tuition policy hasn't simply been accepted by the student body. They did not just shrug and say, oh well, before stopping in at the bank for a student loan application. Instead, right now, they are staging a sit-in. A dozen students have barricaded themselves inside an 8th-floor room in the clock tower of the school's foundation building, the very same one where Lincoln spoke on that legendary night. They've been there since Monday, setting up camp with laptops and hammocks and a new Twitter account. We're here, we're staying, we forgot coffee. They demanded the school, quote, publicly affirm its commitment to free education. This morning, another group of students invited themselves to a meeting of the school's board of trustees so they could take minutes arguing that they needed to be transparency and student involvement. Students all over the world these days are fighting against rising tuition costs. These guys are fighting to remain one of the few colleges in this country that gives every student a free ride. It's an amazing story, and it's still unfolding tonight. Now, here's the even better geeky part. We know they forgot coffee, and we're not sure what can be done about that. But there's also the question of pizza, because college students going without pizza for a couple days, that's not going to happen. And through a stroke of genius, it hasn't happened. Last night, a group of Cooper Union alums decided they wanted to buy the protesters' pizza. But in order to do that, they and the students had to figure out how to get the pizza up to the 8th floor of the clock tower from the outside of the building, and they did it. Because these are quality engineers and future engineers we are talking about. But it did not come about without a little trial and error. Balloons by themselves did not work very well, because you cannot control where the balloons will take the pizza. The wind has a tendency to take things wherever it wants. More balloons were successful at carrying a string up to the protesters. They then used the string to build a pulley system to pull pizzas up to the 8th floor. But if you don't keep the box flat, there's going to be a pretty pathetic-looking pizza with all the cheese pooling at the bottom of the box. Doesn't matter that it's fancy pizza from Two Boots. So what's the solution? Well, of course, counterweights. Ingenious. Balloons plus string plus pulley plus pizza boxes with counterweights to keep them flat equals a delivery of perfectly level pizza pies to the student protesters of Cooper Union, which not only keeps their bellies well fed, but also keeps their dreams of trying to protect a free college education alive for another day. Pizza pulleys. Tonight's Moment of Geek. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow night. And I will see you weekend mornings at 8 Eastern. This weekend, it's my great pleasure to welcome the amazing Dan Savage to talk about gay marriage in Washington. Now it's time for the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell. Have a great night.